Good day everyone, and welcome to a roundtable discussion on the topic the future office workplace. We are proud to present Diane Stegmeier, a leading expert and globally renowned author and speaker. You are our keynote speaker today, so I will gladly give you the word and let you guide us through the topic that you are assigned today, and it's the critical influence approach to effective work environments.
Thank you, Karin, and welcome to everyone that's tuned in this morning. Again, my name is Diane Stegmeier from Stegmeier Consulting Group, and it's a pleasure to kick off this session. My personal goal is to get the thoughts turning here, get a couple of statements out there that may influence positively or negatively how we think about the workplace. So let's start with a statement. I believe that organizations do a very good job of creating flexible work environments. I see it every day of the work week when I'm visiting clients and prospective clients. But I pose a question to the group here. Who's developing the flexible workforce? I'll say that again. Who is working on the people side of flexibility? Because a workplace put into motion can only go so far without the right behaviors. And I think we're in a perfect storm. New ways of working can bring tremendous advantages to organizations in terms of reducing workplace costs, the real estate cost, energy consumption, the commute of people having to drive into the work at specific times of the day. But we also have to keep in mind that there are tremendous advantages to creating a work environment from the people side in terms of providing control over specific places that they would work inside of the office, increasing employee engagement so that would contribute to attraction and retention of the top talent in your organization. So there are tremendous advantages. But I see over the past years that there's a mismatch, that we're missing a huge element of preparing people for the workplace change. I'd like to go back 17 years. I'd like to be 17 years younger. Let's go back 17 years. At that point in time, looking at different workplace environments. If you were in the workplace then, you might have been hearing about collaboration and teamwork and co-location. Brand new terms then, no, and they're certainly not new now. However, people were struggling. There were appropriate workplace solutions put into place that would provide the work settings for collaboration, separate work settings for individual work, concentrated work. Yet when you would walk through these spaces, you could look at the layout or you could walk through the physical location and you'd say, this is a very collaborative work environment. But individuals are not working in the collaborative areas. People were tucked away in their cubicles. They were just back there introducing the coffee areas for the cappuccino, and those were collecting dust. And the only sounds of human life you would hear, the muffled sounds behind the closed door of private offices of the executives that didn't really come out of the office to interface with the people that reported to them. And I thought, something's a mismatch. Senior leaders at that time would say, gee, we've invested in this new technology, in the new furniture, in whatever went into this new work environment, but we're not getting a return on our investment because people aren't using the space. So I set out to find what was getting in the way. What was causing resistance to workplace change, why people weren't adopting and using the space as it was intended. So over the past 17 years, have studied and worked directly with more than 140 organizations around the world, intentionally wanted to look at as many industries, distinct industries as possible. Ended up doing a little more than 24, so 24 or so. The reason being that when we would talk to an organization and they would talk about their unique challenges, they would say, well, you don't understand because we're the financial industry. We're different. Well, the healthcare institution would say, "Oh, you wouldn't understand our challenges because we're the healthcare industry." And name an industry, and we would hear that. The common factor is people, right? You've got people working in those organizations. Many of them in the offices are those common career skills that are transferable to different industries. So over this period of time, began to uncover factors that kept getting in the way. These factors have come to be known as the critical influences. And as Karin mentioned in the introduction, we're going to talk about this critical influence philosophy or approach to workplace environments. Quite honestly, to make it very simple, these are factors, tangible and intangible factors that impact our ability to accept and adopt workplace change. They impact the success of the workplace strategy, but in reality, they also can make or break the success of the organizational goals, because if employees are not doing what they're hired to do, then the organization is not going to be as successful as it possibly could. And when I use the word employees, I want to stress that that is every person that is employed by the organization. You're an employee, you may only be responsible for certain tasks, but not other people. You may be an entry-level supervisor, you may be an executive director, you may be the CEO. Anyone that's employed by the organization is going to be impacted by these factors. Now, you'll notice that we've placed the physical and virtual workplace last on this grid. I did that intentionally because we know that if the workplace design is appropriate, that it will guide behavior. It will help people be more productive. However, these 14 other factors seem to be getting in the way over and over and over again. Let me give you an example or two. If we went through all of them, it'd be a 17-week course, so unfortunately we can't do that here today. But let's look at a couple of examples of how these influences can get in the way of the proper use of the workplace environment. Rewards and consequences. Let's just say we're in an open office environment and I'm working at a benching area during the day, in the morning, and in the afternoon I like to do my concentrated work. It's when I think best. So I'm going to walk over into a focus booth. Now that may be called a touchdown area, it might be called a quiet room. We'll call it a focus booth for that reason. So every afternoon I get into this habit of going that space and I feel like I'm really productive. Well, when I come out of that space after 45, 50 minutes because I have other work to do or a team meeting to attend, my boss may say, "Gee, how was your nap?" Other people are working out in the the hubbub of the office, and Diane comes out of the focus room and it's that time every afternoon. What does that comment do to me as an employee? It makes me think that the consequence of me using that space, and that space is put there for me to use, the consequence is I'm ridiculed in front of my peers. The consequence is, gee, my boss may not trust me. That sort of consequence, so a little thing that someone may say can cause me eventually to say, I'm not going to use that room. I'm going to stay in the open area. I'll stay at the benching area. I'll be distracted. There'll be noise there. If my employer hasn't addressed the acoustical issues, I may be distracted. I may have more stress. If my peer interrupts me, it may take me 20 or 23 minutes to get back in that zone of concentration. But I'm going to work in that open area. I'm not going to go in the private area because the consequences of that. Something like that is an example of how different factors can get in the way of using the appropriate workplace solution. Technology is a natural. If you want people to work and move about the office different times of the day to pick a different setting based on their task, yet you don't have a telephone with either a mobile phone or a follow me function, and your phone is tethered to that workstation, then that technology is preventing you from using the workspace to the full capacity. A factor in here that most people scratch their head and say, what does this have to do with using the workplace? Compensation. A little bit different, right? A little more difficult to understand. However, it can be explained in a very brief amount of time. Many of us are paid the same way that our parents or grandparents were paid in the workplace. We're paid as individuals. Okay? Everyone there for themselves. If I do a good job, I'm going to get a better merit increase. However, what are we asking people to do in the workplace? We're asking them to use the open team area to share ideas so people can come out with better outputs for the organization. Well, why am I going to share that idea with somebody else? Because they may get the credit and they're going to get the bigger raise at the end of the year. It's something that organizations should try to keep in mind. Because it is something that will come up. Communication comes up with every single one of our clients, even ones that we think do a good job of communicating, want to be better, because communicating workplace change, as we know, is so essential, and it has to be done early, has to be ongoing to reinforce. I will say that the most perplexing of the 15 critical influences is by far leadership behavior. If I had to point at one area to challenge our participants as we're looking at developing the workplace of the future and wondering what are we capable of doing, how far can we educate leaders on behavior and behaving or managing people they can't see? Because we've seen so many recurring themes as it relates to leaders being asked to either move out of private offices, take on a smaller space, manage people that may be working from home a day or two a week. We see cultures of entitlement. I have to have that private office. Physical space as a currency. I'm a little bit higher up the level in the organization, so I deserve a bigger office than the junior manager. Senior leaders are exempt of the behaviors expected of the rest of the workforce. The thought that this is only about cost cutting. It's not about helping people be more productive. Again, this could be a very long conversation. I want to make sure that we can move here very quickly to our discussion, our roundtable discussion. So I'll summarize and just say, I believe that developing a workplace strategy has to be done in a blended approach or a hybrid approach where you're looking at the workplace and the workforce. Because companies do a very, very good job of reducing workplace costs, unfortunately, sometimes a little too much. But without looking at increasing workforce productivity, without that balancing act, what you're doing is setting yourself up for disaster. Because I believe if you're not adopting this balanced approach, that you are allowing the workplace design to bear 100% of the burden of changing the way people work. And for anybody in the workplace world, why would you want to accept that burden? With that, hopefully I planted a few seeds here for our discussion. I'll turn it back to Karin.
Thank you, Diane.